Beyond the headlines. This is World Insight.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. At the invitation of Chinese Premier Li Qiang, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is paying an official visit to China this week, the first by a British Prime Minister in 8 years. Starmer is accompanied by senior officials and executives from major British companies. The visit is expected to be an effort to refocus bilateral relations on win-win cooperation and renew the diplomacy. So where are the China-British relations headed? What does that mean for the business and economic ties between the two countries? On that, I talked to Sir Sebastian Wood, KCMG, who serves as chair of China-Britain Business Council and the British ambassador to China earlier from the year 2010 to 2015. And here is our conversation. It's been a long time. Many have been wondering what we have learned over the years in terms of how to continue the engagement and nurturing of economic and trade relations between the two countries.
Yeah, it's been 8 years since the last prime ministerial visit to Beijing, which is too long, really. The two countries have so many common interests. We're both permanent members of the UN Security Council. We both have a great interest in global issues like climate change. We both believe in rules-based international trade. We both believe in standing up against protectionism. So there's a huge amount of common ground, as well as the difficulties and the differences which we all know about.
What do you think are the most important benchmarks from your perspective in terms of assess whether this visit and the big entourage is successful or not?
I feel that many of those benchmarks are already achieved. You know, this is a strong statement of belief in the importance of engagement by the UK Prime Minister and belief in the importance of the relationship between the UK and China. So the visit in itself is a statement. And we also have a very impressive delegation that's come with the Prime Minister. And that's a statement of confidence and commitment from the UK business community and cultural and creative community in the potential of this relationship to grow further.
I was in Davos just a few days ago, and everybody in the world is aware of the rift taking place across the Atlantic. How does the UK look at its business and economic relationship in the overall global backdrop?
Well, I think I'd just make two broad points. The first is that the UK is an open economy and has been now for a very long time. We have noticed also that China has maintained a commitment to continuing to open up to foreign trade partners. So that is our response to the protectionism which we see growing in some other parts of the world. And it's the right response, you know, for the UK and China to recommit to open trade and to rules-based international trade. So that's the first thing I'd say. And the second thing I'd say is that as an open economy, the UK has to take the opportunities of the world's three great markets, if I can put it like that. The US is certainly one of those great markets. The EU single market is the second. China, crucially, is the third of those three great markets. And we need the best possible trading and investment relationship with all three of those markets. And no one should expect us to choose between them.
Now we are seeing huge service trade surplus between the UK and China.
We recognize in the UK that services trade with China, you're quite right, we already have a surplus, and it's an area of huge opportunity for the UK, which is why there are so many world-leading services, organizations and companies in our trade delegation in Beijing today. We notice that the fourth plenum of the Central Committee committed to high-level opening up of services as a sort of guiding policy for the next 5-year plan. So we anticipate that the consumption of services in China, which is already growing, you know, is going to grow even faster in the future. And this is very much a strategic opportunity for the two countries to do more together.
Yes, and a lot of common Chinese, if you walk in the street, they will recognize the strength of service trade by the UK in China.
Yes, yes. And it's I think we could see a significant further wave in the next few years.
However, globally speaking, we have seen tariff wars, trade wars based on facts mainly only about goods trade. We understand the United States, for example, is the largest service trade surplus holder in the world. So how should the world understand more comprehensively, Mr. Chair, about the categories of trade and how complementary, in fact, we have been toward one another?
Well, it's up to people like you and me to constantly remind the public in our comments, in our commentary, of the importance of services in global trade, in international trade. And it's up to politicians as well to make clear to their publics what matters to business and what matters to the economy. And goods is part of it. Services is also part of it. And as countries get richer,
indeed,
people spend more of their income, a higher and higher proportion of their income on services. And that's what we expect to see in China. It's beginning to happen in China, and we expect that trend to accelerate in the next few years.
Mr. Chair, on the new energy area, solar and wind power, actually China is leading it and the leading practitioner of it. Tell me how complementary this could be for the UK when the European continent as a whole is searching for new opportunities of energy.
You raise an important point, and China is actually leading the world now in some of the most important technologies of the coming century, including renewable energy technology, solar and wind power, and also, of course, battery technology and battery storage. And China is on the way to becoming the world's first electro-state, if I can
so
put
to
it
speak,
like that.
Yes.
This needs to be better understood in my country, in the UK, and we should see Chinese investment in those sectors as an opportunity to raise our own game and to actually modernize and invigorate our own renewable energy industry. We have, of course, strengths in that area. We have outstanding globally leading scientific research and innovative capability, and some great companies. But more Chinese investment in those sectors would, I think, be very good for the British economy. And the same is true in Europe.
We have seen the Chinese renewable energy or new energy developing on the global landscape, and yet some of the latest policies in some economies are preventing it from sharing more benefits of that with the rest of the world. How predictable do you think, Mr. Chair, your organization is trying to nurture that environment in terms of policy in the UK?
Every country is going to want to protect its national security. Every country is going to want confidence that they know what is going on in their critical national infrastructure and that they can control it. So there will inevitably be some limits on investment. In China, of course, those limits exist as well. The important thing, I think, is to have law and regulation which is transparent and predictable, so people know where the limits are, and when they're investing in permitted areas, they know that they're going to have a lot of support and a very warm welcome from the host country. And traditionally that has been a strength of the UK, to have that kind of transparent and predictable framework. So that's what I would like to see.
Some businesses have been concerned about the shifting limits, meaning the policies have been shifting. Yes and no can be flip-flop overnight. Businesses from our both countries need time to establish, to communicate with the consumers, to work with the policies. So how to avoid in the near future the flip-flop kind of policies and the shifting limits?
Because the technology moves, and therefore the national security concerns also move, and you need to keep up with the technology. So the regulation will always need to evolve, but it must still be transparent. The rationale for the regulation must be clear, and it must be predictable. The UK has traditionally been pragmatic about these things, that has traditionally been very open to foreign investment, and I trust and hope that will continue in our investment relationship.
For example, about electronic cars, For example, about telecommunications. These are new areas that are crucial for bilateral cooperation, and even for solar panels. So in these areas, there's tremendous potential that business community on both sides understand. But they are nervous. I talked to both sides.
I think we will continue to make the arguments to our contacts in the British government that our inward investment framework, our regulatory framework, should be clear and transparent and predictable. And the government is reviewing that framework in the UK at the moment. We have a piece of a law called the National Security Investment Act, which sets out the rules. That's being reviewed at the moment. So our basic, from the point of view of business, our argument would be keep the areas where there are limits, keep them to a reasonable minimum, and be very clear about where the boundaries are. And then when people invest in areas which are not in that limited area, when they invest in permitted areas, let's give them a very warm welcome to invest in the UK.
On the other hand, we have seen landscape change over the past few years, Mr. Chair. So how both sides, you would work with your Chinese counterpart as well, would keep your minds open about the changes and remain in constant communication?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, technology is evolving very fast. So the areas of national security concern change or evolve from time to time. And constant communication with business is important, both in China and the UK. And the CBBC is really an organisation which exists to carry out that kind of communication. So we will continue to do that.
About artificial intelligence, you have seen the 15th five-year plan. You've already seen the draft of it, in a way, at the end of last year.
Yeah.
AI plus is the China approach. Some describe the interesting differences in the approaches between the United States, for example, which is also a leader in artificial intelligence, vis-a-vis China. One is reaching for the stars, so to speak, the AGI. The other is more open source and AI plus, AI applications. How does the UK consider its own path in artificial intelligence development? And what do you think can be the potential that you can tap in working with China?
Well, of course, we have a lot of very dynamic and exciting companies that are active in this, perhaps the most dramatic area of new technology that exists in the world today. So I think the UK has a lot to offer a partner like China in the development of artificial intelligence and also in the way to apply it in the real world to make our lives better. And this is where China's open source model has particular strengths, of course. I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, but my understanding is that the most advanced chips are not in China, are in other economies. But perhaps the most advanced application of artificial intelligence today is happening here in China, aided by this open source AI model that you're talking about. So it's certainly an area where I think there's great potential for the UK and China to do more together.
We have seen new trends in Europe talking about autonomy, talking about independence, including on AI, artificial intelligence development.
There's also concern about the impact on jobs, and there's concern about,
data and
also whether artificial intelligence is going to develop consciousness and sort of decide one morning to eliminate the human race. I mean, these are real worries that some people spend a lot of time thinking about. I think when you have an open source based approach to developing artificial intelligence, what common sense tells me is that needs to go hand in hand with a robust regulatory framework to try to manage the risks.
You've seen the 15th five-year plan draft. The emphasis put on domestic consumption is tremendous. You have seen policies churning out over the years. How will the British businesses take advantage of that and make sure you are the early comers rather than the late comers?
Well, we've talked already about the services opportunity here in China as services becomes a larger and larger proportion of the domestic economy here in China. So I hope we might see some bilateral government-to-government recognition of that coming out of the Prime Minister's visit, and perhaps a bilateral initiative to explore ways of accelerating the trade in services between us. So that would be one observation. Another is that the more and more Chinese enterprises want to go out and internationalize their operations and their supply chains. That's partly a response to protectionism. It's partly a response to very fierce domestic competition here in China. It is certainly an opportunity for UK financial and professional services, because those are firms that have fantastic international networks, and they are natural partners for Chinese enterprises that want to move into other parts of the world. So we can be a partner for China as it goes out.
The new generations in China, the young people, they do not necessarily see big brands as their destination, but rather see very tailored, updated, related to their culture and related to their values. So how will the British companies, which has been in China over decades, be able to catch that trend and tide to make sure it's the winner?
You know, the traditional strengths of the creative sector in the UK, speed and flexibility and creativity. So I think there's a good chance that many UK creators of consumer goods and consumer content will spot these trends and will respond to them. And as I said, we've got a big creative component in the delegation
yes.
this time. We've got some of our best museums, some of our greatest theatres and orchestras.
Book festivals.
Yes, all participating. I learned a very interesting thing, which is that a national theatre production called Prime Minister was very popular here in China, in cinemas. Their new model is they have the stage play performed in front of an audience, but they also video it and then they show it in cinemas.
Indeed.
And this, apparently this play, Prime Minister, was viewed very widely, was very popular in China, and actually was viewed by more people in cinemas in China than it was in the UK. So that
Congratulations
was a striking example.
I sometimes go with my friends over the weekend to watch those plays.
Oh, really?
Of course, we would love the British Shakespeare Company to come here in person. That would be even better.
My father was the leading actor both at the Royal Shakespeare Company and at the National Theatre. Wow. So I have a personal hope, a personal desire to see the RSC and the National Theatre very successful here in China.
If they do come, let's go there together.
I would love that.
We see the world changes, and of course bilaterally in terms of trade and economic ties would go with it, the change. How do you see something like a middle power or middle-sized economies, as the Canadian Prime Minister a few days ago put it, work in the current environment? What exactly is China as an opportunity for the UK?
Well, as I said before, China is one of the world's great markets. It's the world's second largest economy. Yeah. It is already our third largest trade partner, but there is so much more potential. I think China is only 5% or so of our exports globally for the UK. And when you compare that with the amount that we export to the United States or to the EU, it's clear that in China there is a great deal of room to expand and grow. So I see China very much in terms of economic opportunity. There's this growing 互补性, this growing economic complementarity between us, and I hope that, I'm optimistic we will deepen our economic partnership.
Final note, a personal note. You were the British ambassador to China for 5 years, and you speak perfect Chinese.
哪里已经退步了很多。
Even the humbleness, very much Chinese. So what you remembered about China, from 2010 to 2015 when you were here, vis-a-vis the China you are seeing today?
As I left China, there was a lot of optimism about the relationship. People spoke of a golden era.
Yes,
and then,
I remembered.
Yes, and then subsequently we had a long gap in political contact, and people were talking more about an ice age. And I think we need a grown-up modern, mature relationship. No marriage is perfect. No marriage is an endless golden era, but nobody wants an ice age either. What we need is a mature, pragmatic partnership that makes the most of the areas of common interest between us. And we certainly have significant common interest in the business relationship. And there is given where China is at the moment, given what it wants to do in the 5-year plan, the growing importance of services, the growing number of Chinese enterprises internationalizing and going global, there is a huge potential to deepen that economic partnership.
Coming up in the program, a conversation with Borge Brande, the president and CEO of the World Economic Forum, on having dialogue in a volatile time. Next.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. China's economy has shown strong resilience and continues to contribute most to global growth, said Borge Brande, the president and CEO of the World Economic Forum. We also talked about China's green innovation and sustainable development in my exclusive interview with him during the sideline of the World Economic Forum held in Davos earlier. And here is part of the conversation. The 15th five-year plan, China already made it to the rest of the world at the end of last year, the outline. Now, how much do you think that can, in a way, enrich the conversation here? And meanwhile, how much do you think others can also participate and be a benefiter as China progresses?
We're already benefiting because China growing around 5% contributes to almost 30% of the overall global growth, maybe even more. So the Chinese growth is beneficial not only for China, but also for those that do export and also deal with Chinese businesses. What is interesting now in the new 5 years plan is also the focus on research and development, innovation, and also that China has taken a different approach when it comes to artificial intelligence, is open source, and that represents a different approach. And we're seeing now so many unicorns, startups, and also innovators in China. And that ecosystem is something that we're following very closely. And we will have a special focus on this also during Summer Davos in Dalian.
Artificial intelligence, whenever we talk about it, not only the benefits it brings to all of us, but also the cooperation and competition dialogue. So what do you make of that, especially between China and United States? Both leaders of both countries are likely to be here.
It's true. I think we just have to realize that in the real political world, there will be fierce competition between China and the US on who's going to lead on the frontier technologies. And China is investing so much now in R&D and also to strengthen this part of the economy. China is already leading on the renewables, solar, also wind, speed train. And now I think also on the EVs, the electrical vehicles, we have key people from BYD here, and Europeans are also buying a lot of the BYDs because they're good cars.
Batteries companies as well.
Yeah, exactly. I should have mentioned that. The battery companies, the revolution in battery storage and the prices for batteries is to drive down the prices like happened with solar is a prerequisite for also future revolution in electrical vehicles and also storage of renewables. Then you don't need to balance it as much as in the past with coal or gas-fired power plants.
And for energy efficiency, however, we have seen some setbacks as being expressed by certain politicians, not only just in the US, but elsewhere in the world about whether they will achieve the goal or not for carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. How does the forum see this kind of apparent setbacks?
Dynamic in the investments in renewables and all the decarbonization that is happening, that train has left the station. It's going to happen. If there is stalemate in international negotiations about targets and all this, that's a different topic. But we're seeing now trillions of US dollars invested and investing companies in this new low carbon world. And these are business decisions. And it's fascinating to follow. You know, solar is now 1/10 of the price 10 years ago, and in most countries solar is the cheapest way of electricity with zero emissions. And if there can be a breakthroughs in storing this kind of electricity in batteries that is much cheaper, you will see that there will be other states and countries than China also that will then develop into so-called electro states.
That's Jorge Brandy, President and CEO of the World Economic Forum. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.